allow me to take you back to 1994. I was obsessed with Marathon when it first came out in 1994. And no, not because as a Mac user I had no other games to play. We had plenty of games.
We're talking
Marathon.
We're talking
Marathon.
We're talking
that game of aliens invading a ship.
Right.
Whatever. I had a copy of Marathon and I was happy. I remember it like it was yesterday. Strolling through ship corridors, blasting aliens, all while basking in the pinnacle of graphical technology, turning my nose up at those Doom players, realizing that they wouldn't even be able to see me making fun of them because they couldn't even look up. That's right, I said it. And that's all Doom had, looking straight ahead, like a crusty old man waking up with a crick in his neck. Not me though, baby. I had it all. Up, down, left, right, the four coolest directions. Doom may have had demons, but we had terminals? Reading? What the fuck? Okay, so maybe, just maybe, the Marathon series isn't as good as I remember it being. Or is it? Welcome back for seconds on one of my favorite game series of all time, as we come to a foregone conclusion as to whether the Marahon trilogy is a forgotten masterpiece, or just forgotten. Like all normal, super cool, super talented kids, I was living outside during the day and reading Macworld magazine by night in style. My dad was heavily into Apple computers in the 80s and 90s, so by extension, that made me a big Apple fanboy. It was around this time that I got a copy of a game called Pathways into Darkness from a little-known company called Bungie. Now, Pathways is a hard game, and I didn't make it very far, but I play the same few levels over and over again. Die, restart, repeat. Never really making much progress. Needless to say, the game didn't really capture my attention. But it did put Bungie on my radar, and I've since played every single game the company has released. I've been a fan of Bungie since 1993, which should give you a rough idea of how many trips around the sun I've taken. I've purchased nearly every single one of their games, save for two, the table tennis sensation Nop, aka Pong spelled backwards, and the graphical showcase that is Operation Desert Storm. But Marathon was different. I played Marathon obsessively, is what I would be telling you if I had actually started by playing Marathon 1 when it released. Sadly, due to budget constraints and parental oversight, I went without for an entire year. Enter Marathon 2. I remember buying the yellow triangular shaped box with my very own money that my dad gave me. I may not have played Marathon 1 obsessively, but Marathon 2 I did play obsessively. Played and beat it many times over. It's still one of my favorite in the franchise, but only because it was my first, and you never forget your first game, that is. Marathon 1 seemed like an old clunky relic from the past. I played the Marathon 1 demo plenty of times, but I didn't really play through the whole game in earnest until I bought the Marathon trilogy. When the Marathon trilogy came out, I finally went back and played through Marathon 1, more out of obligation than anything else. Playing it for real though, I realized I had really deprived myself of a very fun game and a storyline that was, in my opinion, better told and easier to follow. This seems like a great jumping off point to talk about the story and one of the reasons I like the Marathon games a lot more than just the pure adrenaline of Doom. If the Halo trilogy is a masterpiece, then Marathon is the scrapbook of ideas that preceded it. It has so many of the same concepts that Halo would later use as its bread and butter. The entirety of Marathon's story is told via computer terminals with text scattered around the levels. It's not the most immersive, but remember this is the 1990s and we've just barely invented Morgan Freeman narrating everything, so I think we can let it slide.
But the viewer didn't let it slide and promptly stopped watching.
The Coles Notes version of Marathon 1's story is thus. A collection of aliens knows the Four invade the Marathon ship and start trying to take over. You're a security officer with no particular backstory, and you have to help the ship's various AIs repel the attack. Leela is your friend, Durandal is your drunk, unreliable friend, and Tycho just ends up being a real dick. Amidst the fight for the Marathon, a biomechanical race known as the Svit decide to rebel against their 4 masters and aid you in the latter half of the game. The Svit are represented with compilers throughout the campaign. There are these weird, floating, biomechanical beings that you'll mostly find hovering just outside of a terminal, ultimately culminating in Tycho joining forces with the 4, Leela getting captured and dismantled, and Durandal stealing a 4 ship and enjoying his newfound freedom as his rampancy begins, which leads directly into Marathon 2. As the game starts, you're awoken from cryostasis and sent down to the planet of Lawan, the Svit homeworld. Durandal forces you to find an ancient Svit clan that broke off from the original 10 clans, a mysterious 11th clan, all while trying to apply pressure on the 4 and prevent them from invading Sol. There's also a super weapon mentioned a bunch of times, a weapon that forces a star into an early nova. Where have I seen this before?
They call it the Almighty.
And then Marathon Infinity is, well, a game that exists. Honestly, just look at this graphic for a second. This is the simplest way the Marathon community was able to come up with to decipher what the hell is going on in this game. To keep it brief, Marathon Infinity has heavy emphasis on dreams and plays with timelines. You get sent back to various parts of Marathon 2's timeline to intervene and change the outcome of events. Sometimes it works, other times not. And there are 6 different timelines, all happening concurrently at the same time. It gets very heady and out there with a lot of terminal text. I'm not sure who at Bungie is the real advocate for this type of deep metaphorical storytelling, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was Jason Jones, Jones being one of the co-founders and longest employee of Bungie currently. These vagaries run through just about all of Bungie's work. Marathon, Halo, Destiny. This kind of storytelling adds an air of mystery to the work. You get the straightforward text that tells you what to do in the mission and what's going on, but then you'll stumble upon a terminal that has text that looks like this. And it has nothing to do with the mission at hand or the gameplay, purely food for thought, an exercise in world building and writing. I won't sit here and tell you Marathon's writing is the finest in the land, but it is very competently written, and when your competition is, well, this, it's a bit easier to stand out, and also one of the reasons I love these games. There are some weighty ideas being thrown around, and I for one like having something to mull over as I blast aliens to gooey bits. Speaking of blasting aliens to gooey bits, the tech behind Marathon is also pretty awesome. You can look up and down. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The Marathon engine is full of neat features, from its land play over AppleTalk, to the complex geometry enabled by its polygonal level data, to the much coveted ability to look up and down. It was also a higher resolution than most of the PC equivalents at the time, which, if we are being honest, there was only one equivalent, Doom. Take a gander at this level from Marathon Infinity, a level that is just 1 polygon shy of the max limit for the game. It is truly a dazzling display of level design, and simply mind-blowing for its complexity. And remember, this is the 1990s. Another esoteric feature of the Marathon engine is its ability to use 5D spaces. So what do I mean when I say 5D spaces? It's basically when you have a hallway that intersects itself and reconnects back to itself. This allows for some truly puzzling designs and some very, very clever ways of faking 3D structures. Faking true 3D structures. Marathon and Doom belong to a class of games often labeled 2.5D, due to the limitations of not being a true 3D space. For example, you can't have a floating room or a bridge that you can go under and over. But in the Marathon engine, you can have floors that go above other floors. So you can create the illusion of, say, a high-rise building, for instance, by creating the outside of the building first and have the door connect to the interior, and then creating multiple stacked floors complete with windows that look outside. Now, those windows won't be looking back down to the outside space, they'd just be looking out to a skybox, but it does maintain the illusion fairly well. It's a feature that the Doom engine just wasn't capable of. You couldn't have spaces overlapping each other in the Doom engine. It allowed for some truly creative uses too. The fake bridge was a favorite of mine, where you design the outside of the structure in such a way that it looked like there was a free floating bridge in the map. The Marathon 1 engine was able to do almost all of these neat tricks. Marathon 2 and subsequently Infinity added some features such as liquids, better textures, you could swim, there's widescreen support, and better skyboxes. But from the get-go, the Marathon engine was a real technological marvel. But how does the game play? See what I did there? Now here's where a lot of you are going to want to fight me. Listen, objectively, Doom is faster, more intense, and just go, go, go. But, I still prefer the pace of Marathon. I realize this is turning into a Doom versus Marathon Fight Night exclusive, but I gotta stick up for my boy. All the footage you've seen thus far has been from the Aleph One engine that is an open sourced update to the Marathon Infinity engine. So it has corrected quite a number of things, but one thing it didn't have to correct, those gorgeous floaty physics. Many of the puzzles and secrets and level navigation are based on this seemingly weird low level of gravity. It can be a bit annoying at first, especially if you're not used to it, but once you've played through a bunch of levels, you'll get the hang of it, and it really makes for a different experience. If Doom Guy has his foot on the gas all the time whilst shouldering the fate of existence, the Marathon protagonist is just floating through life without a care. The enemies you encounter in the series are also rather interesting. I do wish some of the Marathon 1 enemies made their way into Marathon 2, such as this Hulk enemy, but for the most part there are a ton of different enemy factions and groups. The Four are like the Covenant, or rather, the Covenant are like the Four, in that they are an amalgamation of species, and thus there are a whole bunch of unique creatures within the roster. And who could forget our favorite creatures of all, the Bobs. Born on boards, or Bobs as they are known, are meant to be killed, used up cannon fodder.
Michael Vincent's are used up. I need a goddamn
Bob.
Michael Vincent. Is it important that we know who
Bob is?
in order to get this? Nope. I refuse to sign the legislation that allows more than 8
Bob.
Michael Vincents to a precinct.
It is your duty to remove as many of these poor, unfortunate souls from existence as possible, serving a big old plate of genocide, or as I call it, barbecue. Marathon offers a vast array of guns to mow down the Bobs with. The weapons in Marathon range from fun to a bit goofy, but you can definitely see the evolution to Halo in these early designs. The Spanker rocket launcher is so big the graphic takes up half the screen. It is a behemoth, and strikes a very close resemblance to the rocket launcher in Halo. Easily the best addition to the series though has to be the dual-wielded shotguns of Marathon 2. These guys have the most metal reload animations, straight out of Terminator 2. It's a hell of a lot of fun to run through a horde of aliens with these babies.
Baseball's the flamethrower! That kids love
Or
this.
torching those poor Bobs with a flamethrower. Or accidentally killing yourself underwater with the plasma pistol. If you were hardcore enough, you could also do the Vidmaster challenge and play the game on the hardest difficulty using only your fists, like a real badass. The only part of the gunplay I didn't really like all that much was how inaccurate the machine gun was. This was later fixed in Marathon Infinity with the addition of the SMG and its tight, accurate burst, but it's been a problem since Marathon 1. Just look at the spread on this Marathon 1 machine gun. Oof, that's pretty bad. It made using that gun against people in multiplayer matches a bit useless. Speaking of multiplayer, I was privileged enough to own 2 Mac computers at the time. Well, my parents were. And because of that, I was able to play multiplayer with friends. Back when these games were released, there was no internet-based multiplayer, so it was all over local LAN networks. But some intrepid folks did eventually figure out how to trick the game into doing games over TCP/IP, but my experience was definitely a local one. King of the Hill, kill the guy with the skull, or just straight up deathmatch. The floaty physics made for some really funny moments. Suffice to say, the multiplayer is a really good time and a fun distraction. Again, bearing the trademark of Bungie's later titles. When the trilogy came out, Bungie also released their level creation tools. Forge and Anvil were the tools. Forge was the level editor and Anvil was the asset editor. Now up till this point, people were already making levels with third-party apps, but it really exploded when the official tools came out. There were tons of total conversions for Marathon. Marathon Rubicon, Tempest Array, Marathon Evil, to name drop a few. Myself and sometimes collaborator on the channel, Graham, would make marathon levels and then play co-op on those levels. Mind you, these levels were not masterpieces. Basically, they were just large, open rooms with many enemies to kill and a very large assortment of guns at our disposal. Perhaps not the most creative, but definitely endless fun. I think by far the coolest and frankly way ahead of its time feature of all the Marathon games was the saved film feature. This is a feature I wish more modern games did. The fact that modern games don't have this feature in the age of streaming is mind-boggling. You could save a film of your last session and then play back that film anytime you wanted. You could also very easily share your saved films with people on the interwebs. This is a feature that Bungie brought to Halo 3 and Halo Reach because it is so damn cool. It might be one of my favorite features, I think, of the entire series of games. It essentially allowed people to record their own movies using the engine. And this is 1994, people. 1994! The first Power Macintosh was launched in 1994. And here Bungie is dropping saved films on us like it was nothing. And then Bungie was like, you know what, hold my beer. And then they gave the world Mouse Look, a feature still used as the default control scheme for almost every single first-person shooter in existence. Now I love the Doom games, but Doom boils down to find a key, unlock a door, kill demons. Repeat. Marathon is a far more nuanced piece of gaming history. A story that delves into the minds of AI, an alien civil war, and then the reality of you as a player, a cybernetic being. And then you have the technical prowess of the Marathon engine. I know there are going to be a bunch of Doom bros coming in here to tell me to kick rocks, but the Marathon engine was just simply more advanced. Taken as a whole, I think the Marathon trilogy is in fact a masterpiece.
You serious?
And if not a masterpiece, it should at least be remembered with the same reverence as Doom is for the PC. The Mac did not have a killer game series before Marathon, and it thus became the de facto standard for Mac gaming. Marathon was one of the first FPS games to take its story seriously, putting that famous quote from John Carmack to shame. And from its advanced technology to the introduction of Mouse Look, Marathon really does belong in the pantheon of great games. If you want to play the trilogy yourself, there'll be a link to the Aleph One download in the description. Thanks for watching, and if you liked the vid, hit the like button to help us out, and if you think we're worth it, hit the subscribe button to see more vids. And remember, somewhere in the heavens, they are waiting. Somewhere in the heavens, they are waiting.